McKeever, the Public Information Officer for the Adirondack Park Agency, who's been there now at the APA for 10 years. And he's going to tell us something about the agency's mission and some of its accomplishments and also some challenges. Keith, where didn't leave? Oh man, glad you're still with us.
Good morning. I came over to Wilmington, the great town of Wilmington today, over the shoulder of Whiteface Mountain. It is full-on fall out there. And for our visitors, I encourage you to get out today before you leave and take in this amazing beautiful place, because right now it's at its finest. It's truly an honor to be here today with such an esteemed group to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Adirondack Park Agency. As Nick mentioned, I've been here 10 years. Next week will be my 10th year with the Adirondack Park Agency, and it so happened that it coincided with the 30th anniversary of the Adirondack Park Agency Act, which was quite a collection of characters in Lake Placid. And that day was very, very informative to me. And I had lunch with Zoe Smith that day. Man, it was high on cloud 9. Well, since then, it's certainly been a turbulent but very rewarding 10 years. Working for this agency is special, and it's something that I don't take for granted. And I'm joined today by some people who I don't take for granted. Our chairwoman, Lonnie Ulrich, our executive director, Terry Martino, and somewhere out there is our former chairman and former chair of the State Land Committee on Regulatory Affairs and Legal Affairs, and now, thank God, replacement for the great John Banta, our agency counsel, Jim Townsend. And we are eager today to hear from all the distinguished panelists and speakers. We also look very forward to building on momentum and the excellent work of the Common Ground Alliance to ensure future generations will benefit from all of our work and the work of those who preceded us in establishing this amazing Adirondack Park. The Adirondack Park is 1/5 the land area of New York State, roughly the size of the state of Vermont. It's home to 103 great towns and villages, the state's tallest mountains, its wildest rivers, and so much forest, meadows, and wetlands it will take a lifetime for us to explore. Nearly 3 million acres of the Adirondack Park is protected by our state constitution as forever wild, and another 3 million acres of private land is regulated based on what we believe are the smart growth principles of the APA Act. Certainly, we can also agree, when compared to the rest of the region, we truly are an island in an ever-urbanizing Northeast. As we all know, the Adirondack Park Agency was created in '71 by the New York State Legislature to develop and implement long-range land use plans for both the public and private lands within the Adirondack Park. Enacted in 1972 and 1973 respectively, the State Land Master Plan and the Adirondack Park Land Use and Development Plan are, in my humble opinion, simply genius. And the mere fact that New York State was able to establish a state agency to administer a land use plan over 103 home rule municipalities, a land use plan which regulates development based on density and conservation principles that are the foundation of today's smart growth conservation subdivision contest, well, that's truly an outstanding accomplishment. And I salute all of you who helped bring about this historic achievement. For me, my first introduction to the APA Act and the State Land Master Plan came as an environmental science student at SUNY Glasgow. I vividly recall standing on the steps of Hawkins Hall on a beautiful day like today. The leaves were beautiful, the sun was out, and I just said to myself, I want to work for the APA because I need to live in a small town with a vibrant main street that is surrounded by abundant open space. And I want to be confident that my community will still resemble itself, will still look and live the way it does today, 20 or 30 years down the road. And I honestly believe, in inside the blue line, this is possible. And I feel that way today more than ever, due in part to another significant accomplishment. And that is the preservation and conservation of nearly 1 million acres of land since the inception of the Park Agency. And as much as the APA would like to take credit for this, we all know it's the hard work of many passionate individuals and organizations combined with the dedicated efforts of the State Department of Environmental Conservation that has brought us to this point. Today, the Adirondack Park includes an additional 200,000 acres of forest preserve and nearly 800,000 acres of conservation easement. What we're looking at is our land use map and state land map, and the brown on the right depicts state conservation easements, the vast majority of which are resource management classified lands. The lands that are which are the lands that we need to protect the management, enhancement of forestry, agriculture, recreation, and open space resources. That's paramount and of great importance. It's a point to consider today as we go forward. Presently, inside the Adirondack Park, there's 1.5 million acres of resource classified lands, private lands. And now more than half are protected through conservation easement. Today's conference was organized to discuss how to strengthen the APA. Well, I'd like to start with what I believe is the greatest strength of the APA, and that is our dedicated staff and board. We have 53 people and 11 board members that go to work every day committed to the Adirondack Park, and they do so knowing full well that regardless of what our determinations are, someone's going to criticize us. That's our fundamental reality. But I tell you, it's an amazing staff, and they're diligent, they follow the law, and they conduct themselves in the highest professional manner. From time to time, we're human, and we may get frustrated, but never, never do we get disheartened. This place is too important, and we fully understand the impact of our work. And our work is something. On a normal year, as if APA could really be considered a normal year, we issue between 300 and 400 permits, we perform 250 soil test pits, we delineate 350 wetland boundaries, negotiate a couple hundred settlement agreements, and that's been going down, given a lot of outreach, and we conduct 300 pre-application meetings, issue at least 1,000 jurisdictional determinations, and answer 5,000 phone calls. In addition, we wrestle with regional planning policy issues related to state land classification, unit management plans, local planning, energy, economic development, and invasive species. The list goes on. At this point, I'd like to take a few minutes to review the APA Act. Over the past few years, we've heard a number of presentations from professional planners and conservation organizations. These presentations have been very informative, but some of our more experienced staff have raised the question, how is this any better or different from what we do on a daily basis? The answer that comes to my mind certainly is scale. The APA is a regional planning agency charged with administering a complicated, density-driven land use plan over an area almost as big as the state of Connecticut. The basic purpose of the Act is to ensure conservation, protection, preservation, development, and use of the natural resources of the Adirondack Park. Therefore, the Act directs us to seek a balance between environment and the economic sustainability of the park's 103 towns and villages. It's not an easy task. And today, there's a very strong feeling that vibrant communities equals a strong park. Okay. Before we can approve any project, we must make 5 findings of fact. I'm just going to rip through them. Is the project consistent with the land use and development plan? Is it compatible with the character description of the land use area? Consistent with the overall intensity guidelines? Compliant with shoreline regulations? And most importantly, does the project result in no undue adverse impact? These are extensive findings and give the agency wide discretion when reviewing proposed land use and development. To support the findings, staff relies on staff relies on development considerations which are outlined in Section 805 of the APA Act. They cover natural resource considerations such as water quality, sedimentation, topography, open space resources, air quality, noise, wildlife, and aesthetics. They also cover critical resources such as river corridors, rare plants, endangered species, habitat, and wetlands. Site development considerations such as slopes, soil characteristics, depth of water table, adjoining and nearby land uses, and government considerations such as the ability to provide public infrastructure. Agency staff has recently completed revisions to the development considerations intended to inform applicants, give applicants a clear understanding of how these considerations apply to project design and approvability. Finally, we need to consider the importance of the urban intensity guidelines established in the Act, which I think is utmost critical. These guidelines and the corresponding average lot sizes, and that is key, average lot sizes. It's not a minimum lot size. Average lot sizes provide the agency incredible flexibility for project design and approval. The original APA staff devised a plan that limits densities in areas not capable of supporting intense development and channels growth to locations in the park with adequate public infrastructure and/or soils and slopes that are capable of supporting a higher density of development. This is smart growth. We are, and we have been practicing conservation subdivisions for a long time and on a regional scale. So details. And bear with me, I'm sure many here are fully aware of this, but I also know that some aren't. We have 6 land use classifications inside the Adirondack Park, ranging from hamlet, which is where the APA has least jurisdiction and where we're trying to direct growth by not having jurisdiction, as well as these are areas that are pre-existing areas and areas with good infrastructure and good soils. When we get to move away from hamlet, we're going to see an increase in our intensity guidelines based on an average lot size and allocated principal buildings per square mile. We get to moderate intensity, we'll move out to 1.3 acres, 500 buildings per square mile, and you can see as we go further out towards resource management, we get a larger average lot size, not a minimum lot size, a larger average lot size and less buildings per square mile. Take how it looks on the map. This is Keene Valley, in the great town of Keene in Essex County. What we're looking at here is the land use plan. You see the brown with the hamlet. Hamlet areas are the service and growth centers of the park. They were intended to accommodate a large portion of the park's housing, commercial, and industrial activities. There's no APA restrictions, intensity guideline restrictions here due mostly to the presence of public infrastructure. We're trying to channel growth into these areas and leave development up to local governments. Adjacent to the hamlet areas in red, and this one is just to the north of the hamlet area, is the moderate intensity areas. This comprises about 3.4% of the park's private lands. They're located primarily adjacent to hamlets, and they're there to provide for residential expansion. They're also located along highways or accessible shorelines where existing development establish the character of the area. They're designed to accommodate residential expansion where community services are readily and economically available. We have an average lot size of 1.3 acres in moderate intensity, which relates to about 500 buildings per square mile. The orange in the map is the low intensity areas, which comprise just under 10% of the private lands in the park. They are normally within a reasonable proximity to a hamlet where the physical and biological resources are fairly tolerant and can withstand development at an intensity somewhat lower than in hamlets and moderate intensity units. These were areas where we were looking for, again, more residential overflow, and also areas that in the original act where we were looking to accommodate the second home market that was anticipated to grow. We're looking at 3.2 acres as an average lot size, and it works out about 200 buildings per square mile. The yellow on the map is the rural use, and they're generally more remote from hamlets. There's more building constraints due to site factors, and we also want to protect open space. So these areas were there to sustain rural uses such as farming. And another objective was to keep sprawl from occurring in the Adirondacks along travel corridors so we can preserve that scenic appeal and increase the economic benefit which we derive from the park atmosphere. The average lot size is 8.5 acres and 75 principal buildings per square mile. And lastly, on the map, the green, the resource management lands. These are the lands where we're really out there to protect and enhance forest, agriculture, recreation, and open space resources, including. So these are lands where we're going to see the most protection, the most oversight from the APA. We're looking at 42.7 acres per principal building, and it works out to about 15 buildings per square mile. I see Mr. Terry's photograph, and I shall leave another. Across the Adirondack parks, there are places where we have channel growth to where it's most appropriate. This is a great intersection. This is a great photograph of how the land use works. Here from Rooster Cone Mountain, we're looking down at the hamlet of Keene and Keene Valley, and we can clearly see the unique intersection of community, open space, and public land. And this is a great accomplishment, where we are channeling growth to where it's most appropriate and protecting open space. I'd like to walk through a couple of examples of what we feel are APA conservation subdivisions. at approximately 420 acres of resource management land in the town of Horicon, Warren County. To the back of this lot is the Fairmont Wilderness area. Generally, any land use development or resource management will require an APA permit. In this project, the subdivision of resource management that is also an eighth of a mile from a wilderness area definitely qualify for its jurisdiction. The applicant, like many developers in the Adirondack Park, believed they needed 42.7 acres per lot in order to receive a permit from the EPA. So the initial project came in with long driveways and homes built close to the wilderness boundary. Our concerns obviously here are protection of open space, wildlife connectivity, and minimizing disturbances to the natural environment, tree cutting, stream crossings, and wetlands. Our staff used an ecological impact zone analysis process to assist in the review of resource management and rural use land use areas. This GIS model allows us to both quantify and visualize project impacts on wildlife habitat and natural resources. It's based on a premise that single-family residents and driveways have an impact on habitat and wildlife populations greater than their actual footprint. And we've been doing this now for the last 10 years based on a substantial body of research, including work by the Wildlife Conservation Society, which worked to get us to a point where we feel as though we're safe for single-family developments in the Adirondacks, the impact zone being 150 meters from the actual disturbance. And this is what we're looking at right here. In this particular project, given the fact we're using an average lot size and a minimum lot size, through pre-application discussions with the GIS analysis, subsequent site visits, we altered the proposal to concentrate development on carefully selected and well-designed sites. Staff reviewed all the 37 development considerations as well as suitability of soils for on-site septic. And this project resulted in the approval of 10 1-acre lots and approximately 400 acres of resource management land conditioned from any future development land use and development. The back lot remains as open space, and homeowners have the right to access that for recreational purposes. In addition, the developer achieved the economic benefit from reduced construction costs by shortening roads, and homeowners have better accessibility to emergency services. Having an average lot size and not a minimum lot size provides the agency with tremendous flexibility in project design. One recent example would be the Highland Farms Project in the town of Keene. This is an area with a very unique resource management parcel located high in the foothills of the town of Keene. It's one that also contains significant slope problems, and when we worked with the applicant to ensure that all development would not occur on the lots that were mostly in red and those that are in yellow there, which were showing the real severe slopes. This is over a 1,200-acre parcel, but we're only improving 6 lots that are down close to the road in the greener areas 1 through 7 and 8. We again, in this particular area, in this particular project, we worked to protect the open space character and avoid negative impacts on the steep slopes. And we worked with the applicant to approve a project that limits development to the low-lying areas. We conducted the same ecological analysis we did for the other project in Horicon, and we worked with this to change the project design. At the top, you will see the red or pinkish color, that's the impact zones that will be proposed for new development. The green is the existing development. And you'll notice that we're working with staff. The applicant reduced his impact of new development by concentrating his projects closer to the areas that are already having existing development and avoiding steep slopes. Enough on conservation subdivisions. Shorelines. 2008, APA took a significant step towards restoring protection of shorelines. We undertook and enacted regulatory reform which rescinded a 1978 regulation that allowed pre-existing structures within shoreline setbacks to expand without any oversight from the EPA. As it was explained to me by staff with experience in the late 70s, I was still a 10-year-old boy, the APA passed a regulation to allow pre-existing structures located in the newly created APA shoreline setback areas to expand without any oversight from the EPA. Probably because of the same reasons why the shorelines were classified moderate intensely when the APA Act was first initially created. But at that point, who would have thought that these 600 square foot cabins that were dotting the shorelines of the Adirondacks would grow into 6,000 square foot second homes? This is what we're seeing. A little cabin, a deck, the deck is closed in, the second story goes on. This is the trend that happened throughout the Adirondacks. And given that trend and the associated potential negative impacts, the agency undertook a fairly unpopular regulatory action, but with your help, and the wisdom of the courts, we prevailed. And we believe our water bodies, will be better off because of this reform. And we had so much fun with that 2008 regulatory reform process that we came back in 2010 with another process to develop a address shorelines, and that was to clearly define boat houses, something that had been difficult, I guess to say, for 30 years. Prior to 2010, boat houses were exempt from the APA shoreline structure setback requirements because they were boat houses, and they had it. But as a result, they often resembled second homes. Quite frankly, some probably were. One of our main concerns with large boat houses is the potential for these structures to contain plumbing and the very real potential that that infrastructure is going to fail, resulting in negative water quality issues. So the APA, again, had a very unpopular set of public hearings, which was very fun to oversee, including getting in between a 90-year-old man and John Banta. We established a 1,200 square foot threshold, rendering boat houses over 1,200 square feet now subject to the shoreline setback requirements, implicitly requiring a variance from APA. With over 10,000 lakes and 30,000 miles of rivers and streams, shorelines are a critical resource inside the park. And we strive to work with the law that we have to retain vegetation and keep new land use and development set back to avoid degradation of water quality. And we are very interested to hear from you today and discuss our shoreline protection. It would be remiss, also not to mention as a great accomplishment, the Adirondack Park Invasive Plant Program. We were a founding part of APIP, and APIP is known across the state as the most active prison in New York. We're really proud to be part of this team, and we're going to continue to support the eradication of invasive plants. We've created a general permit that will help expedite hand harvesting of invasives, and we are poised and ready to work with lakeshore owners on keeping these invasives out of our lake. Well, I'd just like to switch now to touch on our experience with telecommunications. The scenic appeal of the Adirondacks is incredible, and it is the foundation of a vibrant tourism economy. In the early part of my career, we were on the hot seat in a big way regarding telecommunications. Cell phone and high-speed internet are essential components of today's modern society. Tall towers required to transfer those signals around the park could have been daggers in the heart of our scenic resource. However, APA was proactive in the early 90s and developed a telecommunications policy and tall towers policy, which we used to ensure the implementation of this infrastructure would blend into the landscape and not be readily apparent. I love substantial invisibility. I think it works. And I think it's something that we held the line on. Despite strong lobbying, which included inflammatory comments in the media, we did hold that line. And today, we are regularly approving telecommunication projects in a way that fully complies with the APA Act and our regulations. This was a photograph our friends from the Adirondack Council put out when they were dubbing the Lake George Tower in Fort Anne as Franken Point. It's in there. It's a 100-foot tower, and it's in there, right there. Now, close. We put these guys through the ringer, and it was, you know, we see towers all the time outside the park, and they do not look like this. So this was a process that we were very proud of. You can get a little up close and personal look of one right next to the Near House in King Valley. I walk right by it. I lived in King Valley for 7 years, and I walk right by it. This is a 120-foot simulated white pine tree. We also use, we don't skylight towers, and probably running out of time, I want to keep moving forward, but it's really important to know that this was a difficult one. This technology is needed. We were getting tons of pressure, but we held the line. Moving forward, we really feel that a consensus on a transfer of potential building density bill would go a long way towards protecting the park's open spaces and strengthening the park's communities. That photograph Mr. Terry showed there is a pre-existing subdivision on the backside of that mountain with 40 spaghetti lots that this individual wants to move that, he wants to move that density off that hill. He's looking for an opportunity to do that. APA has proposed to amend our statute to allow for the transfer of building density from more restrictive land use areas to less restrictive land use areas. And we believe this is consistent with the purpose of the APA Act to concentrate growth away from the park's unique natural resources and stellar open spaces. We know there's interest among landowners who do not want to develop their properties, but given financial realities, may someday have to do so. A bill like this would create an economic incentive for these landowners and work to preserve many of our iconic views across the park. We need to find common ground on this, and we respectfully ask you to consider how to make this concept work. I got just a couple more. Just want to say, this is an amazing park. This is an amazing park. We have world-class recreational opportunities. We have wildlife that's been restored. We have moose in the park once again. And we have tremendous ancient mountains and valleys. And we have a generational responsibility to pass this along in better condition than it was given to us. I just want to thank you this morning for your attention, and thank you for your commitment to the Adirondack Park.
More perfect timing. Wow. We're right on schedule. So we have a 20-minute break now. Stretch our legs, have some coffee, whatever, and we'll see you back here at 10 o'clock for our first panel discussion.